Hello aspirants, looking at current affairs for 5th March, Sunday. The news items that we have picked up from the Hindu newspaper are these 13. We'll look at them in detail. The first one, GST Council clears draft laws. So this is regarding the GST Council. You should know about this. This is a body which has been established comprising of all state finance ministers, and it is headed by the central finance minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley. So this GST Council has to take the decisions on the various GST proposals, and presently it has approved two significant bills. So there are 5 bills which have to be approved before GST comes into effect, and 4 of these have to be passed by the parliament, the central legislature, and the one bill, state GST bill, has to be passed by all states. So these 5 bills have to be approved. Out of this, one had already been approved by the GST Council, that is the compensation law. So this bill has been approved by them in the previous meeting of GST Council. So this compensation law, you should know that the central government has assured that for the first 5 years of implementation of GST, whatever losses the states would suffer would be compensated for. So that is this. And then the other 2 bills which have presently been approved in the GST Council meeting presently are the central GST bill and interstate GST bill. So these 2 bills have also been approved. Means now after GST Council's approval, they'll go to the cabinet. After cabinet approval, they'll go to the parliament, and parliament has to pass them. Then these are 3. The other 2 which are there are state GST bill and the union territory GST bill. So union territory GST bill is for union territories, and state GST bill is for all states which have a legislature, including the 2 union territories which have their own legislature, that is Delhi and Pondicherry or Puducherry. So these union territory GST law will also be approved and has to be cleared by the parliament, and the state GST bill has to be approved by the legislative assemblies of the states. So this is regarding GST. So goods and services. So this is goods and services tax. Means for interstate trade and intrastate trade, how taxes are applied means there is central GST would be for within the state. There is central GST2 and state GST2 which is applied. And for interstate trade means between or among states, here integrated GST or interstate GST as it has presently been called will be applied. So this is central GST, state GST and interstate GST. Plus there is union territory GST and the compensation bill. So these are the 5 laws with respect to GST. And how is this GST different from the taxation system which is presently in effect? So GST will come into effect. The central government has put a deadline for it as 1st July. So they want to put GST into effect from 1st of July. So how will the 2 systems differ? The present system and the GST system of taxation. We'll just take a look at that too. So this is an example given, assuming that GST taxation rate is 8%. So it's a goods and services tax, means it is subsuming all central level and state level taxes presently applied. Means the service tax which is applied by the central government is also subsumed under it. The sales tax which is applied by the state governments, the central sales tax, all these taxes are subsumed. So that is why there are 2 taxes, central GST and state GST, both would apply. Last time also we saw 14% was the limit for GST, maximum GST to be applicable. That has been increased to 20% presently. So in the model GST bill, so this 14% was actually doubled. Means central GST is also there and state GST is also there. So 14% actually becomes 28% that way. So now with this example is given for GST rate of 8%. How does it work? So this is the flow. Means it's actually a value added tax. So VAT is presently has been implemented. So GST will be subsuming actually that too. So value added tax means at every value addition the tax is applied. So this is an example of a cloth which is sold by a weaver to a tailor, from a tailor to a retailer, and then retailer to the ready-made showroom, and then the purchaser purchases this, consumer purchases this shirt or ready-made garment which is there. So a weaver, when he is selling the fabric, he wants to sell it at 100 rupees. So on 100 rupees, which is the sale price, he has decided the GST which is applied, as the rate we have decided for this example is 8%. So 8% GST would be applied. So means the price at which he has to sell is 108 rupees, out of which 8 rupees is the GST which has to be paid. So this 108 rupees on top of that, actually the input cost is only 100 rupees. So value added tax means what value is being added by the tailor that would be taxed. So tailor, if it's assuming that 100 rupees is the input cost at which he's brought it, 150 rupees is what he adds up to make it 250. So he wants to sell it at 250. So now for him, taxation which has to be paid is on the extra added, that is on 150 rupees only. So on 100 rupees 8 plus on 50 rupees it is 4. So half of it means 12 rupees is the GST which has to be applied for the tailor. The tailor pays GST of rupees 12. So this actually he pays 20 rupees and 8 rupees has to be claimed as tax credit. So the actual GST paid will be complete. So this payment of GST takes place later because you are actually selling it right now. With each shirt, you are not keeping something separate and selling it to the government. So it's at the end of it that GST deductions take place. So that is why there are waivers or claims also being made, tax claims, that is credit given, not debited from your account but credited into your account because that tax has already been paid. So actually the payment would be, the price at which the shirt would be sold is 270 rupees. Means how 250 plus 12 rupees is actually his and 8 rupees is also added up here. So that aspect is also here only. So he has to sell it at 270 rupees. So this 270 rupees shirt then goes to the retailer from this tailor. So the retailer then sells it to the ready-made shirt showroom. So the retailer at his end, what he wants now is the input cost is actually 250 rupees. So on 250 rupees, he wants to add 250 more. He has doubled the price. So from input, he wants selling price as 500. So means 250 rupees is what is added. So on 250 rupees, how much is the GST which has to be applied? Means 8 plus 8. On per 100 rupees, 8 rupees. So 8 plus 8, 16 and for remaining 50 rupees, 4. So that is 20. 20 rupees is the GST which retailer has to pay. So this 20 rupees is added up. So 20 rupees on this plus even the previous 20 rupees has not yet been paid. So that is also carried forward actually. So the price actually becomes 540 now. So on this 540 rupees which has been sold, the shirt which will be purchased from the ready-made showroom is at 540 rupees. So this ready-made shirt in this showroom is for 540 rupees. So shirt you purchase from this retailer is at 540 rupees. So at 540 rupees when you are paying, how much is the GST which is being paid? It is the complete deductions here. You can see value addition. So value addition, what has been done on taxation only on that. Means here 8 rupees, then here 12 rupees, here 20, and then here finally it comes down to 20 plus 20, 40 rupees. So 40 rupees is the GST which you are paying and 500 rupees is actually the price originally as the sale price X without GST which has been decided. So this we understand how GST works. Now, so this is how GST taxation system would work. But to understand how it is different from the present taxation system, this is another example taken. So presently too, there are different types of taxes which are applied. So if sales tax, for example, is applied here, so what happens is these taxes which are not value-added taxes. Of course, VAT presently in effect is a value-added tax. So this is GST would also be a value-added tax. So what happens is that taxation is done only on value addition and at each stage deduction takes place. So government gets taxation revenue at each stage. So here taxation which is taking place here is paid as such, but then the profit margins which are kept, these profits, say 20% profit margin at the next stage is there on the entire amount. So it actually should be on 100 rupees. That 20 rupees is the profit margin, but actually becomes 22 rupees. So that is how the prices for the consumer increases. And plus at this stage, because taxation is applied at each stage, what happens is that value addition taxation also takes place and the consumer price is less, plus the entire system gets integrated. So that is the major benefit of it, that nobody can fudge accounts here because each has to be tallied with the other. Means manufacturer, what he says has to tally with the wholesaler, wholesalers records have to tally with the retailer. So that way this entire integrated system, taxation system which is developed, ensures that there is no fudging also of accounts and also there is no loss of taxation revenue to the government also. Plus the consumers also have to pay lower price. So that is the major benefit of GST. The compensation which we are talking of, that states who would be suffering would have to be compensated. So that would take place in the initial transition phase, because what happens is that taxation which will be collected by the states would be more in such cases where there are consumers, because earlier you can see manufacturing states were getting more taxation and now consumer stage is where taxation would be paid, entire amount would be paid, so they would be benefiting. So consumption states would be benefiting and the manufacturing states would be having some losses, but this is only in the transitionary phase which would take place. So for that purpose, compensation has been provided for. Even in the case of VAT, when value added tax was brought into the country, so that was only for goods. Now it is goods and services tax. So how is GST different from VAT is also this. So what happens is the sales tax is actually an old example. Presently we have value added tax. So VAT, value added tax, was introduced in 2005 and it has subsumed all these taxation on goods. So this now GST is the next step in value added taxation system, services also included. So this is also regarding the pros and cons. Actually, there are no cons, as it is we have just discussed. So this will simplify tax compliance for businesses. It will lead to greater efficiency, and also the entire country would be unified into one single market. It will boost economic growth as well. So there will be no differences in taxation among states and all. So that would also be eliminated. So economic growth with that, from that perspective, it would get a boost. Cons, no real cons. It's only that compensation would be provided for states. There may be a drop in revenues for major producer states of goods and services. So for that, compensation has been assured by the government for the first 5 years. Central government has assured that. Then the next news item is Indian store owners shot dead in US. So recently we saw few days back that about the Kansas shooting, in which an Indian engineer was shot dead, an alleged hate crime. And now we hear of this another shooting incident in which a 43-year-old store owner of Indian origin was killed in South Carolina state in USA. So the police here says that this is not linked to hate crime, this and has nothing to do with him being an Indian, but of course it would be investigated and gain significance in the present scenario. Then the next news item is India's women obese and anemic. So this is a study done by National Family Health Survey. So NFHS surveys have been doing rounds since 91-92, early 1990s. So this is the fourth round, NFHS 4. So this is done by the Union Health Ministry. So in this information has been taken from over 6 lakh households, 7 lakh women and 1.3 lakh men have given information, and first time NFHS survey has provided district level estimates also, and it shows that people in various parts of the country continue to struggle with problems of obesity even as malnutrition is strong. Means there is a population suffering from malnutrition and there's a population suffering from obesity as well, and obesity has its risks of heart diseases, high blood pressure, diabetes, breathing problems, and also some cancers are caused due to obesity. So this is a huge concern, and this data from NFHS survey is beneficial because it helps in identifying the need of any new program and area specific approach which may be required. So NFHS is actually done with the assistance from, the funding comes from various funding agencies, USAID being the prominent one. So US Agency for International Development. So also support from UNICEF is provided for this. So the Ministry of Health has made International Institute of Population Sciences in Mumbai as the nodal agency for NFHS survey. So this is the key findings of NFHS survey. So this is data from 11 states. So it does not have a door-to-door survey being done, but sample space is picked up. Some people are picked up randomly and this survey is done. So in NFHS 3, which was conducted in 2005-6, and NFHS 4, a decade later, 2015-16, the changes are shown here. So sex ratio you can see has declined. Women literacy rate has increased. Men literacy rate has increased. Institutional deliveries have also increased, means deliveries in hospitals, child born in hospital and not in home. Marriages before the age of 18 has increased. So this is a cause of concern, that child marriages or marriages at young ages are taking place. So both males and females, you can see marriage at an early age has increased. Then the next news item is islands on the sea. So this is regarding the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So for the administration of this region, this island, a union territory, an approach paper has been developed. So this approach paper is prospects of island development options for India. So this is a plan which has come via the Niti Aayog office. So this plan has actually been drafted by Ministry of Defense. So Ministry of Defense Navy has developed this plan, and this plan has nothing to do with military aspect, defense aspect, but it is related to economic activities. Like it talks of rail construction, port and petrochemical complex development, SEZ development, promotion of tourism. So that is what it is emphasizing on. That is one vague aspect to this, that Ministry of Defense Navy is having an approach paper on all these aspects. Plus also another concern is that this proposal which has been put forth has not taken into consideration the Aboriginal tribes regulation which is there for Andaman and Nicobar. So there is Andaman and Nicobar Protection of Aboriginal Tribes Regulation of 1956. So this has been largely ignored. So the historical, social, ecological and legal context of the island region has been ignored. So this regulation is significant because the indigenous communities here, the Jarawas and Onjes, so these are the tribes of Andaman and Nicobar Islands which need to be protected. So this regulation actually was providing for that, and now this approach paper is completely ignoring this regulation. So that has been highlighted in this article. It says that it wants to transform, the approach paper wants to transform the island into an integrated tourism complex through long lease or PPP, public-private partnership model. They want to develop an international airport here. They want a new harbor to be constructed at Dugong Creek. So this is for inter-island connectivity. So these steps being taken would have a drastic effect on the Aboriginal tribes here. So many of these tribes do not have outside world interaction also. So there is a need for preservation of these tribes, to look into the welfare of these tribes as well. It should not be only about development and economic prosperity. So that is the context in which this article is about. There was a similar developmental plan in 1965 which was proposed as well. So this is also similar to that 1965 plan is being highlighted here, and that plan actually spoke of colonization, because as I said that these people or these regions have not been touched over. So they stay out of the reach of the outside world, the humans population from the mainland and from other islands on this region. So that is why it spoke of colonization, that colonies should be established here, people should settle down here. So in that context, the colonization term used is also been highlighted, that we had been colonies, that outsiders came and settled here. Do we want to colonize another region now? These islands need to be colonized is the term which should be used. So that was used as such in 1965, and in the present article 2 similar steps are being proposed, that these islands need to be inhabited by outsiders now. So the forests of the island here, Andaman Nicobar Islands, are inhabited by these tribes Onjes and Jarawas, and in this 1965 development plan, the term used for this region was called Jarawa infested. So infested is a term which has negative connotation, that it so means forests should not be infested by tribes, but it should be seen as timber, a resource. So that aspect, economic perspective and not having social historical perspective, is completely negative. So that is another point. So these Onjes on Little Andaman Islands, if you look at it, they had been the sole residents of these Little Andaman Island, and now that is not the case. During the 1965 plan, there was also a proposal that 6,000 acres of forests should be cleared, so that 12,000 families from mainland can settle in here. They should establish integrated industrial complexes here, like sugar and timber industries. So this 2016 plan is also demanding that this port be developed, airport be developed. So all this Dugong Creek is actually part of the Onjes Tribal Reserve on Little Andaman. So means it would affect the Onjes tribes. So it's an important settlement region here, deep into this reserve. So that aspect is not considered, is what is worrying. So also it says that there is drinking water challenge shortage in this region, plus it is on the seismic 7-5 zone. That means the most active of the seismic regions in the world is located here. Earthquakes are a regular occurrence here. 2004 tsunami, which was caused by an earthquake, was not far from Nicobar Island. So if tourism is being developed here, this aspect also has to be taken into consideration, is another point. So the author here says that what is been happening is terra nullius, means empty, unexplored virgin territory should be acted upon, which it is waiting to be acted upon and operationalized. Means this is an untouched region, so economic resource, so it should be exploited. So that as perspective is not correct. So that is what they are trying to say. So you can see 1964-65, entire island, Little Andaman Island, was a tribal reserve. Forest was unexploited. Onges were the sole residents on this island here, and they have inhabited it for thousands of years. But presently, if you see, around 50 years later, Onges Reserve is 30% smaller. So more than 200 square kilometer of forest has been handed over to settlements, plantation, and agriculture. Remaining forests are under increasing pressure, and for every one onge on Little Andaman, there are now 200 individuals from outside. So it's no longer an onge exclusive reserve. So that has been the status of these tribals over the years, and now this development plan will further negatively affect them. So that's what it talks of. So of course there are two perspectives. There needs to be human interface also, plus then how much they are ready to interact is another aspect, because there are still some tribes in Andaman and Nicobar Islands which have no human interaction. So they're completely averse to any human interaction as such. So this you can see are the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, the North Andaman here, the Middle Andaman and the South Andaman. So this North, Middle and South Andaman, and then this is the Little Andaman Island here. This is the Duncan Passage here between the South Andaman and Little Andaman. Barren Island here, the only active volcano in India is here. Then the 10-degree channel separates the Andaman group of islands from the Nicobar group of islands, and these Nicobar group of islands are Car Nicobar. Then this is Little Nicobar, and this is the Great Nicobar. This is the intrapoint. Of course, there are many more islands, but then every island's name is not important. This is the southernmost tip. You can see Indian tip is here only. This is the southernmost tip of India. Peninsular India, southernmost tip is Kanyakumari, but as such, if you look in terms of latitudes, southernmost tip is this Indira Point here in Great Nicobar. This is regarding the Little Andaman and the islands and the population here. So 1850 population compared with 2000, you can see Little Andaman we just spoke of, completely inhabited by Onge tribe. Now it is only a small portion which is with Onges. The Dugong Creek is also here. So that's talking of a port being developed here. So that has been opposed. So of course there is a little exaggeration too, because already population settlement has taken place. But then of course the tribals would also be affected by any developmental plan. So taking them into consideration is important, is at least what has to be emphasized on. This is the Jarawa tribe here you can see, and presently Jarawas have the reservation, a reserve which has been assigned to them has been expanded. So this jungle actually is the original tribe which is said to be comprising of Jarawa. So Jarawa tribe was presently here. Now they have been shifted actually upwards. Then these are the various tribes, because tribal information is also important for us from prelims perspective at least. So tribes of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So Andaman group of islands, there are 4 Negrito tribes. So Negrito are these Negro African facial features as such which are there. So Negrito tribes you can see are 4 major here. So this is Great Andamanis, Onges, Jarawas and Sentinels. So the population is very low. You can see the number of people of this population which are present on these islands. So they have suffered because of outside contact, because when outside contact comes up, they develop diseases for which they don't have resistance and they get eliminated. So tribals who are outside, who are out of the contact of outside world, this is a problem which they suffer from. So 99% of Great Andamanis were wiped out when British first colonized these islands. Onge tribes, they are poachers and loggers. So they hunt animals and use the timber. So they have been settled presently by Indian administration and are dependent on the outside population for food handouts. So that's how they live their lives on Jays now. The Jarawas, they have had peaceful contact with outside world few years ago only. Since few years they have been in news quite often too, and they have believed to have survived tsunami as well. So they also undertake hunting, fishing, gathering of food from plant sources. Then the Sentinelese. The Sentinelese are the most isolated of all tribes. They have had no peaceful contact with outsiders. They fire warning arrows at those who approach them, due to which it is not possible to click their photos as well. So this is the Sentinelese tribe on Andaman group of islands. Then the Nicobar group of islands, here there are Mongoloid tribes. So they have Mongoloid features. So these are Shompen, which has around 380 people surviving, and Nicobaris, which has around 30,000 people surviving. But now many are feared dead because, or they have been affected because of the 2004 tsunami. So this Shompen tribe, you can see, are hunter-gatherers, and they have limited contact with outside world. Nicobaris group of islands, these are horticulturists. So they have converted, many have converted to Christianity and have been assimilated, but they maintain their distinct culture. So this is the Nicobaris, which has the high population also. The others are particularly vulnerable tribal groups of India. Then the next news item is soaring heat recorded on Antarctica. So on this Antarctic peninsula, the northern tip has recorded the highest temperature seen so far in the continent, and that is 17.5 degrees Celsius. So this is very warm compared to comparatively compared to the Antarctic temperatures. So the ice melting which is taking place, glaciers melting, this is a huge cause of concern too. So this Antarctica is said to be holding 90% of the fresh water on the earth, and if this fresh water, this water melts, because it's in the glaciers, fresh water majorly is in the glaciers. So if these glaciers melt, then entirely, then the sea level would rise by 200 feet. So this is a cause of concern. If temperatures are rising here, sea levels would rise, and it would affect the entire, globe as such. To many low-lying regions would also be submerged. So this is presently in news. In Antarctica, there are various research stations. So present melting, which was seen, is at near the Argentine Research Center, means Argentina, the South American nation. So this is the peninsula actually, which is said to be here. Peninsula is a geographical body, means it's a landmass which is surrounded on three sides by water. So that protruding region is called a peninsula. India also has its research stations here. You can see Khatri, which is located here. Then there is another one, Dakshin Gangotri, which actually got submerged, and now it is only a supply base. And then recently we have also established another one, Bharti. So these are the research stations of India too on Antarctica. You can see there are claims being made too. So various countries making their claims. So you can see this is Australian claim being made, the New Zealand claim being made, Britishers making their claim, Norway making its claim. So claims are being made on Antarctica also, just as we have seen earlier with respect to Arctic. So these are the research stations in Antarctica too, which India has, and the year in which they were established, and the location where they are. So this has been converted to a supply base because it got submerged in ice, Dakshin Gangotri. The two are working presently. The next news item is China's defense spending to rise by 7% this year. So China has presently made a statement that its defense spending for the year 2017 would be around 7%. So this, it says, is to guard itself against outside meddling in the disputed regional territorial claims. So of course, outside here is with a reference to USA, and regional territorial claims with respect to claims which China makes in South China Sea and East China Sea. So that is with respect to that they are saying that defense spendings would increase, because also recently we saw American military spending being raised. So plan has been put forth that American military spending would be raised to around 10%. So this is a response to that, and this is actually China has been increasing its defense spending. So last year too it was a 6.5 to 7% increase in 2016, and this actually was the first time in last 6 years that the spending was in single digit. Spending growth was in single digit. So this is continuing that trend. Earlier it was in double digits. So military buildups are taking place in China as well, and America is also increasing its military spendings. Then the next news item is Iran's S-300 system becomes operational. So this S-300 is actually an air defense system of Russia, which has been delivered to Iran now. So this deal had been delayed for long because of the UN sanctions on Iran. So Iran had been enriching uranium, the nuclear technology which it was developing for manufacturing weapons. So because of that, sanctions had been imposed. IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, had also undertaken, investigations there, inspections were done there, and post that these sanctions were imposed. But then after the Iran nuclear deal, that is actually the term is joint comprehensive plan of action. So that was the agreement which had come into effect, which is a multilateral agreement, means it is between Iran and P5+1 and European Union. Means there are 6 nations plus EU. So all are parties to this, means Iran. And P5+1 means permanent 5. 5 permanent members of UN Security Council: US, UK, France, China, and Russia. And +1 means Germany. So the other one is Germany. So these have finalized this. Even we have heard, we had discussed this in news also when US President Donald Trump took office. He said that he would cancel this nuclear deal, but then this cannot be cancelled because it's not just between Iran and USA. So also we have seen that USA has been putting sanctions on Iran. So the missiles, ballistic missiles which have been tested by Iran, after that we have seen US imposing sanctions on Iran. But UN sanctions have been revoked now. So this air defense system has been delivered. Also Iran is saying that it is developing its own domestic air defense system too. This is called Bavar 373. So this it says is more advanced than S-300 also. So this is an air defense system, the way we have ballistic missile defense. So this will be able to eliminate targets like ballistic missiles, drones, etc. So this has been put into operation. That is the news. The next news item is high on energy. So this is actually regarding the energy sector. Oil and gas sector in India been benefiting, been on a high presently. So this is being seen in Sensex also. The S&P BSE oil and gas index is also doing well. Means it has seen a surge of 50% since 2014. So this has benefited the PSUs, oil marketers also. So public sector undertaking oil marketers are 3 major ones: Indian Oil, Hindustan HPCL, BPCL, Hindustan Petroleum, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. So they have also benefited. Plus the gas transmitter, GAIL, has also benefited. Reliance Industries, which is in the private sector, this has also gained on the Sensex. So this is in news, and the benefits which have been accrued by them are because of crash of crude oil prices, number one. So because we have seen crude oil prices globally have been reducing, the fuel pricing reforms which the government has undertaken, we'll see this in detail. Healthy refining margins which they have now, even an effect of fuel price reforms. High priority being given to local gas distribution, and also to favorable renegotiation of terms with foreign gas suppliers. So we'll see each of these presently. So first of all, crash in crude oil prices, of course, a fact we know. Fuel pricing reforms which have been undertaken, this is that the subsidies which have been provided here for fuel, means for oil, gas, means petroleum, petrol, diesel, and natural gas has been reduced. So this you can see, since natural gas is actually LPG. So here also Give It Up campaign, all that initiatives have been undertaken are for eliminating subsidies which are provided. So this you can see mid 2014, the crude oil prices reduced, and around that time diesel pricing was also free. So this was made possible because this had been difficult. Petrol pricing was decontrolled in 2010, but diesel pricing could not be because it would have an effect. But then diesel prices globally reduced, because of which this became possible. So diesel pricing was also freed from control. So it would be market regulated now. So petrol is also market regulated, diesel is also market regulated. So this helped the PSU oil marketing companies, because they had to have under recoveries done. Means they had to sell at the price which is fixed by the government. So government determined price may be much lower than the fuel price globally. So then there's a huge loss. So that is called under recoveries. So these under recoveries which they had to incur were compensated for by the government, but of course there's a delay. So on the paper they have these under recoveries, and these huge under recoveries made them suffer. So though compensation would come later, but then the loans which they had to take, the interest at which they had to pay, all that was a burden on them. And these were PSUs. So of course the government, it's a public sector undertaking. So the way they were treated and the compensation, the way it would be provided. So these PSUs were suffering, and now we are seeing that PSUs have benefited when diesel prices are decontrolled. Means their under recoveries have been drastically reduced now, because diesel accounted for 60% of the under recoveries. So that is the benefit. Also for LPG cylinders, we have seen there's a cap put on subsidies, means only 12 cylinders a year would be provided. Direct benefit transfer has been provided for. So again, PSU oil companies need not be suffering here in this case too. LPG also under recoveries have been reduced further because of this LPG decontrol and direct benefit transfer. Direct benefit transfer, yes. And then the next is what fuel pricing is presently under control is very minimal. So there is CNG which is there, and other small aspects which are there, means LPG also which is provided, kerosene which is provided under subsidies, it's there. Otherwise, it has been decontrolled. So benefits of this are both to the government also and to these PSU oil marketing companies also. So they have their subsidy burden reduced, the government, plus what they did was they increased the excise duties. So revenues were increased. So means the consumers actually did not benefit. Means globally prices fell, means the government also should reduce the prices because it is decontrolled. But they did not reduce the prices. The difference was actually in terms of excise duty hike. So excise duty hike made that difference not much. So that is how the government has also benefited out of this. And refining margins for the PSUs have increased because now after refining, the price at which they have to sell, that is also giving them good margins. So this is the refining margin, difference in price of their fuel basket at which they are buying crude oil, and then after refining, the price at which they are selling. So that even it says paradoxically, means strangely, even ONGC and Oil India have benefited from crude oil crash because these are exploration companies, means they explore oil and natural gas. So when global prices of oil and natural gas reduce, means they should suffer. But then they have also benefited because they also were having a portion of under recoveries on them. So this under recoveries benefit which they have accrued has resulted in them benefiting as well. So they were also taking burden of under recoveries. So that way all have benefited. The PSUs have benefited, government has benefited with more taxation coming in. Then the subsidy regime is discussed here. So subsidy for LPG cylinders is given and kerosene is given, and the government has agreed that it would take LPG subsidy of 18 rupees a kg for LPG cylinders and 12 rupees a litre for kerosene. So this would be compensated for by the government. Rest has to be borne by ONGC, Oil India. GAIL has been exempted. So this is Gas Authority of India Limited. So this has been exempted. So this is the status that these profitable PSUs are compensating, paying for the under recoveries. So where would the government get money from? Through these other PSUs. So that is how it is. So the present price, the price of oil as such, if it is at $55 to $60 a barrel, that is called the Goldilocks range for India. So government will get good excise returns also, excise revenue also, plus the prices also would be reasonable. It will not have to bring it up or down. The PSUs would also benefit. Upstream, downstream companies, means those who are exploring would also benefit. Downstream and upstream would be those who are selling would also benefit. So everybody would make profit. So this is called the Goldilocks range. Of course, consumers are not happy because the prices they will have to pay will remain the same. So that is there. High import dependency is another concern which we have in India because domestic output has not increased a lot. It has stagnated and import dependency continues to be high. We import 80% of our crude oil requirement and 40% of our natural gas requirement. So the discoveries which have been made have not been or have had limited success. Even recently we have discussed this news that 31 discovered but not yet developed small fields of ONGC and Oil India have been put for bidding. So this was because earlier they were considered as not being able to be explored at reasonable rates. So it would become costly to explore them. So now with the advancement in technology, they have put on auction these 31 discovered but not yet developed small fields. So that is also a step which has been taken by the government, but then import dependency stays high. The exploration which has been done has not gained results. Then this is about gas. So with respect to gas, natural gas, the gas distributors have flourished presently because it is also a clean, environmentally cleaner source of energy. So we have Indraprastha gas in Delhi, Mahanagar Gas in Mumbai. So these metropolitan cities have these gas distributors which are benefiting. So they are providing CNG to vehicles and also piped natural gas to households. So this is the benefit. And then also another thing is gas importer. Petronet LNG has also undertaken changes. The long-term contract which it had with Qatar's RasGas has been renegotiated. So now the prices have been reduced sharply. So this will also benefit. Lower cost pricing will be there for India in gas which has been imported. Also another aspect highlighted is that this Petronet LNG's Kochi terminal has not been utilized completely because there is no pipeline connectivity, sufficient pipeline connectivity there. And on the other hand, GAIL, here gas transmission major GAIL, it is seeing that the pipeline capacity which it had increased is not being used because the gas output has decreased here, primarily from KG Krishna Godavari D6 fields. So this KG basin of Reliance Industries has not been utilized effectively. So this underutilization of gas pipelines is taking place also, and there in some places there is no pipeline connectivity. So these problems are also there. So then next is regarding the strategic reserves which the government of India has developed. Because we are so much dependent on imports, strategic reserves are being built. So these 3 reserves have already been set up. So this is in Visakhapatnam, Mangalore and Padur. And now government has proposed 2 more strategic crude oil reserves which will be established in Orissa and Rajasthan. So this will take the entire strategic reserve capacity to 15.33 million tons. So this is being undertaken when the crude oil prices are low. So that is a good point. Even PSU oil companies have been pushed by the government that they should acquire international energy assets, taking advantage of the lower crude oil prices. So recently there have been acquisition of stakes in Russian assets too. So by ONGC. So these aspects are also important. So the consortium of Indian energy companies. So this is also important because one company by itself has limited capacity, but if all companies, major oil companies come together, energy companies, then they have become a consortium which can bid in such international stakes also. So that was the recent budget proposal also, that integrated public sector oil major should be established. So this would benefit in these international assets bidding. So that is also a proposal which has been looked into. It was just proposed in budget 2017. So that is regarding oil sector. The next news item is e-wallet usage slips as cash returns. So we had seen e-wallets usage increasing significantly post demonetization. Now they have slashed. So means cash has come back in form. So that is a fall of 50% which has been seen. So from November, December to Jan, February, there is a fall of around 50% in its usage. So these e-wallets were Paytm, MobiKwik, FreeCharge, which are also used presently in some categories. They are still popular, but overall usage has fallen. Then the next news item is Center unveils training scheme for traders. This again with respect to a push to digital economy, the government has proposed a scheme to train medium and small size traders in various modes of digital payments. So how to understand means to understand, make them understand digital payment mechanisms and how it can be simplified and adopted by them. So these camps, workshops will be conducted, programs will be conducted by National Institute of Electronics and Information Technology under Ministry of IT. So there will be state workshops, regional workshops, and also these DigiDhan campaigns which are being done under it also workshops would be undertaken. Then the next news item is India-Canada pacts to be progressive. So this is Canadian minister who is saying that India-Canada agreement, free trade agreement which is being negotiated. So this is CEPA. India-Canada Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So this and also FIPPA, Foreign Investment Promotion and Protection Agreement. So these are under negotiation. Canada has recently finalized an agreement with European Union. So Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement has been finalized, and under this the provisions which are there are said to be progressive, and Canadian minister presently saying that even with India, the provisions which should be there, elements which should be there in these agreements should be progressive elements. So what does this term progressive actually means is that the aspects which have been highlighted, it says that various provisions on environment, labor, right to space, to regulate in health and safety, protecting cultural diversity have to be included. But then actually where India is objecting to on India-Canada SEPA is that non-trade issues are not to be included. So non-trade issues it calls is this environment related, labor related issues, because it's a trade agreement. So what environment and labor has to do? Because many a times we see that labor related laws, putting that as an objection, they restrict trade. So those are called non-trade barriers. So these aspects are also there. Then even this environment related issues been put into picture and they restrict trade. So these are what India is objecting to, that these aspects should not be included in the trade agreement. And also another significant provision is on investor state dispute settlement. So this ISDS mechanism, which has actually been included in Canada EU agreement. So this Canada wants to be there in India-Canada agreement too, which India is sternly opposing to. So this is there in investments agreements. So this investment agreement, what is there is that investor and state have a dispute. So that settlement will be taking place in international arbitration courts. Means it is allowed. So state means government. So foreign investor investing into the country and has a dispute with the government where the investor is investing. Actually it is there that first local remedies should be sought. So that's what India is emphasizing on. Even model BIT, bilateral investment treaty, which we have developed, is also with respect to this aspect only, that first local remedies have to be sought, means local judicial system, whatever regulatory measures are there, regulatory bodies are there, those have to be approached, and then after exhausting them you can go for international arbitration. Because presently also we are seeing in various cases, especially the Vodafone case, India is being dragged for international arbitration. So we don't want that. That is why bilateral investment treaties with various countries have also been allowed to expire. We have discussed this. So this with Canada's free trade agreement, also this foreign investment promotion and protection agreement too, it wants this ISDS mechanism, and India is strictly against this, that this cannot be included. So that is regarding the whole issue here, because then the government has to pay huge compensation for the losses if the case goes against them. So that is there. Then the next news item is Uber used secret software to steer drivers from stings. So Uber has acknowledged to some extent that they are using this software, Greyball. So this is called Greyball by them internally. So this means that if there are regulators who are posing as customers, riders, and using the Uber services, and they want to check whether local laws are being broken or not, or even if there are opponents, means the competitors who are also using this service to create problems as such, because if many call the taxis and then they do not actually use the service, so entire system gets disrupted. So for all such customers, what it has developed is this program which is having a fake version of its app which is served to them. So then if they call and cancel also, nothing wrong happens. It's allowed. It does not affect its functioning. So that's what it is calling it. That is violation of terms of service. So this is Greyball is part of that system with which we are protecting the drivers from these sting operators or stings as such. So that is what it is. Then the last news item is the green option for 3D printing. So these scientists have developed cellulose form which can be used for as a renewable biodegradable alternative to polymers for 3D printing. So 3D printing we have discussed earlier too. We'll look at it once again too. So this is a manufacturing technology, means you can print whatever design you have planned can be printed. So this is an idea, a design, a CAD design, computer aided design is developed. So this is a 3D design developed. Then the printer software makes slices of it, layers of it as such, and all these layers are added together and the printing is done using these material, which makes the product into a reality. So this is what it is written, that it is an additive manufacturing technology. So addition as such of various layers is done. A 3D object with successive layers of the material is developed. So this 3D objects developed means whatever shape you want, whatever material you want can be used for this purpose. So presently what is used are generally the polymers, the artificial polymers. So there are natural polymers too and artificial polymers too. We'll see that also. So this is actual 3D printing being done too. So it's actually heated up. So material is heated up, layers, parts are then formed into whatever shape is required and then heated up and merged together, and actually the product which is required is produced out. So that is called a 3D printer, 3D object created. So polymers are actually what monomers coming together. So these jointly joined together by covalent bonds, large number of monomers, they become polymers. So polymerization, this is a chemical process, monomers join together. So these polymers can be natural or synthetic. So natural polymers are like cotton, silk, wool, rubber, wood, are also cellulose, are all natural polymers. And synthetic polymers can be polythene, plastic, which we know, nylon, terylene. So these are synthetic polymers. So polymers are generally used for 3D printing. So now a new form of this natural polymer cellulose has been developed. So this will be renewable, biodegradable alternative to the other artificial polymers that are currently used for 3D printing. So this is the new technology developed. So new product developed actually, or new way of having 3D printing. So that is called the green option, because it is renewable and biodegradable. So what they are using is high concentration cellulose solutions. Actually, they have seen are too viscous, means they move not as free flowing liquid. So they cannot easily be formed into various shapes that is required. So what they are using is cellulose acetate. So this material can be easily made from cellulose, and it is readily available, currently used also, widely produced also, and it can be dissolved in acetone, means cellulose acetate dissolved in acetone. It can be easily extruded so that whatever shape it is in flowing form, so it can be made into whatever shape required. So the acetone here quickly evaporates and cellulose acetate then solidifies in place. And after this hydrogen bonding has actually been removed. So then after this, they say that a treatment is done on this using sodium hydroxide. So then the hydrogen bonding network is also restored and it becomes strong also. It strengthens also the printed parts. So this 3D printing with this cellulose acetate, this system will provide a renewable, biodegradable alternative to 3D printing, for 3D printing. So that is being discussed here. So these are the news items for today. Thank you.